Spain at 9. John Turode makes a delicious prawn pad thai on This Morning from 10. And actor Jamie Davis is the guest on Loose Women here at 12:30. Now the latest ITV News. It's Wales at 6 with Jonathan Hill.
On tonight's Wales at 6. Pay or we don't play. An ultimatum to the WRU as the contracts row that threatens the Six Nations becomes ever more real.
We realise what we do and how fortunate we are to do it, but if this was any other line of work, any other industry, for this period of time, with this amount of uncertainty, you'd get the same reaction.
3 years after Dennis devastated large parts of Wales, we revisit the householders living with the fear that it could happen again.
This is the replacement fence that we had, and it's not going to stop any water. It might stop a log coming through, but it's not going to stop any water. It's about as useful as a chocolate fire guard, isn't it?
Plus, tourism versus community in one of Wales' most beautiful landscapes. We'll be digging down into the row over plans for a new holiday village. And restoring a much-loved landmark, dubbed the Pearl of the Vale of Clwyd, after it was ravaged by bad weather. Hello, good evening. Wales international rugby players have upped the ante on the WRU by setting a Wednesday deadline to resolve their pay dispute, or they'll refuse to play in their next Six Nations fixture against England. The players also left a sponsors' dinner early last night in protest at the handling of the game's finances in Wales, after the union said they'd been paying salaries they cannot afford. Head coach Warren Gatland also waded in on the debate today, saying he supports the players in seeking a resolution, but wants to ensure the fixture against England takes place. Here's our reporter Hamish Auskerry on another tense day for Welsh rugby.
The negotiation over contracts that's grown into a crisis has now escalated even further. Two of the biggest beasts of the game in Wales sitting down ready to be asked previously unthinkable questions, like will players go on strike and force a cancellation of the test against England?
I suppose it is. It'd be hard to deny, but it's the very last. It's the very last option. There are people really impassioned. I think ultimately, if you treat people badly for long enough, you get to where we find ourselves. And again, we realise what we do and how fortunate we are to do it, but if this was any other line of work, any other industry, for this period of time, with this amount of uncertainty, you'd get the same reaction.
But would head coach Warren Gatland support the players if they said they don't want to play against England?
No. I mean, I completely support the stance that they're taking in terms of wanting to get some resolution about the issues that they have, but I think there's a lot more involved in terms of ensuring that fixture does take place.
Away from the media's gaze, the Furore found a new epicentre last night, an event at the Parkgate Hotel in Cardiff with players and sponsors reportedly saw some stars walk out. Those reports were not explicitly denied at the press conference today, and players' concerns would not have been alleviated by a statement put out by the professional rugby body yesterday. PRB chairman Malcolm Wall said, "The cold facts are that the WRU and clubs have been paying salaries that their businesses cannot afford. We are confident that our salary packages are in line with the UK market." But that position has now been criticised by the head coach of the national team for all the world to hear and see.
It's a little bit disingenuous to say that the players have been paid too much money from a union's point of view, because it's in no way is it their fault that those contracts have been negotiated by the regions or the agents through the players. So I don't see how it's a fault of theirs. The bottom line is that we've been overspending in Wales for a number of years, and some of the regions in financial difficulty, and that's the situation.
The WRU have simply said there is no room for manoeuvre when it comes to players' contracts. So, unless something gives from either side, one of the most important dates in the Welsh rugby calendar, facing England next weekend, may be under threat. But in truth, there are much bigger battles ahead, as the game in Wales tries, ultimately, to stay afloat.
Interesting times, and Hamish is with me now. How serious is this situation?
Well, in so many ways, it couldn't be more grave, the situation, John. Alan Wynne-Jones talked today about the fact that strike action would be the last possible resort, but he also said in the press conference that many players were increasingly feeling they had no other option. He talked about the emotional impact on players and their families of this uncertainty, and all of this is leading to some quite unexpected twists. At the last WRU press conference I was at, there was a Netflix crew filming all of it as part of their Six Nations special film. Today, reportedly, they were barred from filming the press conference due to a request from the players. Now, what we do know is that this has been something that's been going on for many years, but we understand there are 6 days now for the WRU to give players some financial certainty. Otherwise, the game against England in 9 days may never kick off.
OK. Hamish, thank you very much indeed. Residents in Pontypridd say there hasn't been enough planning to help the town face potential flooding in the future. It comes on the 3rd anniversary of Storm Dennis that wreaked havoc on large parts of South Wales and left hundreds counting the cost. Our correspondent Hannah Thomas is there for us this evening. Hannah, how are people feeling 3 years on?
Well, unconvinced, I think, John, that this won't happen again. The light is dropping here now in Pontypridd, so you can't really get a clear view of the River Taff. But beyond that bridge, there are still residents living in fear that the water will pour through their doors for a second time. An event like a flood is a major traumatic experience. And no doubt those residents woke up this morning and were immediately taken back to the awful memories of the 16th of February 2020.
There is yet to be another storm like it. Dennis flooded nearly 3,000 homes. The Taff reached record levels on Sean Street in Pontypridd.
It's up to the flood gate.
Residents like Stuart Glennie saw their road underwater and the railings disappear. But could the replacement have been more of a barrier to future floods?
This is the replacement fence that we had, and it's not going to stop any water. It might stop a log coming through, but it's not going to stop any water. It's about as useful as a chocolate fire guard, isn't it?
This was the same spot just over a month ago. Stuart got his camera phone out as the Taff was once again in full flow.
Of course, the Taff is much calmer today, Stuart, but do you think residents get very anxious when that river level rises now?
Oh yes, certainly. Like when we get like what they call the red alert, which is what we had back in January this year. I even parked my car up the top again, same as last time, but obviously it didn't come up as high.
3 years ago today, this was the scene on Taff Street. Businesses and charities were devastated. Now some of them are calling for help because they still cannot get flood insurance.
We're actually waiting for flood barriers to be put into the shop. You know, that will at least give us some peace of mind, but it's not going to be an absolute deterrent if we get those sort of levels again. But it would be great if we could get some kind of insurance that is underwritten by Welsh Government that we can access, because, yes, it is a big worry still.
The Welsh Government says that's a matter for the UK Government. But Storm Dennis left a legacy. Dawn Wood became a councillor in the aftermath of the floods, and she's joined the campaign for a public inquiry.
I think that would help to inform what actually happened, tell us the whole story, not just have a couple of paragraphs from the Section 19 report. This is not going to get better. Climate change is here, we're impacted by it, and we have to put things in place to help people, businesses, families, homes.
The Welsh Government says it's commissioned an independent review and has a committee looking at how nationwide flooding can be minimised by 2050. And we'll hear that report next year.
Hannah, you're in Ponty, but what about the wider area?
Yes, it wasn't just here in Pontypridd where Storm Dennis left his mark, of course. Rhondda Cynon Taf as a whole was probably the local authority suffering the greatest impact from it. The power of the water in Tylorstown caused a landslide. Thousands of tons of old coal waste came careering down the mountainside. But as Richard Morgan reports, the Operation Clear Up was a big one.
Whoa. Oh my God, that's bad.
It was one of the most enduring images of Storm Dennis, an avalanche of coal waste spilling down the mountainside in Tylorstown. By sheer luck, no one was hurt.
It's a miracle.
But everyone remembers that day 3 years ago.
Came down over the top of the surface, down into the river, up over this banking, and some of the spoil ended up in this wetland meadow here.
Oh, it actually came this far, did it? Jeff lives less than a mile away from the landslip. He says ongoing work to secure the site has made residents safer, but the resulting narrowing of the river has led to flooding downstream.
It's washed away the path, and it's virtually impassable, other than like a four-wheel drive which I've got behind me, and it's impacting on people's lives.
On a clear day, the scar on the landscape here is still all too visible, as are the workers trying to secure the ground against further slippage. But in this ever wetter Wales, what more can the authorities do to guard against future flooding and its consequences?
£14 million actually this cost, the whole scheme.
Here in Newport, Natural Resources Wales have built an expensive system of flood defences to protect residents in the west of the city from an overflow of the River Usk.
I think a lot of the time people don't realise that these are actually flood defences.
They're designed to blend in with the local environment, but experts say defences are only part of the solution. Where we build and how we plan for poor weather are also important.
We really encourage people to have flood plans, think about it in advance. You know, what would you do if the worst happened to you? Things like making sure that your important possessions you know where they are, you can move them, thinking about moving your car out of harm's way if you do get flooding.
The flooding takes away all the top of the river walk.
Back in Tylorstown, Jeff knows that next time it rains heavily, his favourite walk will be underwater. It seems we'll all have to get used to the risk of flooding, whilst being vigilant to the biggest risks, because next time the consequences could be worse. Richard Morgan, ITV News in Tylorstown.
Hannah, it's difficult to believe it's been 3 years, but those fears still remain.
Yes, absolutely they do. And as we've addressed in our reports tonight, climate change is here to stay with us, isn't it? And how we adapt to that is going to be key to this. As I said in my report, people were nervously watching this river just last month when we had that very wet weather in the first half of January. But what we haven't had so far this winter are any named storms. By this time last year, we had 6 of them. Storm Franklin, if you remember, caused chaos in parts of mid-Wales, and that followed hot on the heels of Storm Eunice 2 days before. But we haven't seen anything like that so far this winter. Now, this afternoon, the Met Office did issue a warning for northern parts of the UK for Storm Otto. That's set to bring 75-mile-an-hour gusts of wind there, but we're not, fortunately, expected to bear the brunt of that here in Wales. However, there will be people wondering tonight, John, whether winter does have a sting in its tail.
Well, let's hope we survive unscathed. Hannah, thanks very much indeed. The funeral of Claire Drakeford, the wife of First Minister Mark Drakeford, took place in Cardiff today. Senior members of the Labour Party and opposition leaders were among those paying their respects at Thornhill Crematorium. She died suddenly last month at the age of 71. The banning of greyhound racing in Wales has moved a step closer after the Welsh Government announced they'll be consulting on ending the sport after a petition. Campaigners have welcomed the move, but the owners of the only track in Wales, Valleys Greyhounds in Caerphilly, say they're shocked by the move. The chair of the Senate's Petitions Committee says they will consult with all sides of the debate.
We listened to the concerns of the one track in Wales and other representations from those who are supportive of the industry in Wales. The evidence that we heard was overwhelming to the committee, and we did call for a ban on the matter, and also for that consultation, which is the next stage in this.
Accessing healthcare has become an increasing challenge in many parts of Wales. Now the community of Solva in Pembrokeshire is the latest to face questions over how locals will get to see a doctor when the local GP retires. If no replacement is found, 2,500 patients will face a half-hour journey to Haverfordwest to access treatment. Here's our West Wales reporter, Gwennan Campbell.
It's a calm winter's day in Solva. But for this close-knit community, the tide has turned for their local surgery, leaving locals worried.
Yeah, there's been around the village lots of meetings, and we've had Hywelddar people down talking us about what could happen. But yeah, there's a big campaign in the village to try and save it. I mean, we did it with the school. We managed to save the school years ago. And it's the same sort of feeling about the surgery. We cannot afford to lose it, you know, it's essential.
Hywelddar Health Board says he's working with Solva Surgery to ensure the continued provision of GP services for patients. It says locals should remain registered with the practice while longer-term plans are developed. Services will continue as normal until the end of March. But for many, this isn't enough. And at a coffee morning in the village hall, local residents had strong opinions on the matter.
My concern is, as a patient, I've had serious surgery, and when I've had a surgery, I've had things like stitches and drains and stuff taken out by the practice nurses. What am I supposed to do if they're gone? And it's not a case of, right, you can have the district nurses, because the district nurses are stretched. They're based in Fishguard, which is 15 miles away. I feel very, very strongly that they should keep the surgery open.
We need a doctor here. There's a load of old people that needs, you know, looking after, and don't want to go too far away. So we need a doctor in surgery.
Ian Robertson-Steele is a retired doctor, and he's concerned about the impact this could have on the wider community.
Well, we're having huge problems in Solva at the moment, even getting an ambulance. This has been a worsening problem. If we had patients from Solva with no primary care immediately available, more people would go to A&E, there'd be more ambulance calls, the quality of health care would deteriorate, and it would put the NHS under enormous pressure. I'd like to see a managed salaried GP practice service in the rural areas across Wales. It's not just our surgery, it's Solva surgery today that's at risk. It could be your surgery in any village, anywhere in Wales tomorrow.
The Health Board will make a decision on the future of the practice next week. But residents are hoping the winds will change and they'll be able to save their surgery. Gwennan Campbell, ITV News, Solva.
Well, still to come tonight, stonemasons to the rescue as one of our best-loved churches gets much-needed repairs.
It took 4 years to build this beautiful pearl of the Vale, but don't worry, the repair work won't take that long.
And the weather for the next few days is just looking a little bit less settled. It's also looking a little bit less sunny, but it is staying mild. I'll bring you the forecast, as always, at the end of the programme.
The debate over the impact of tourism on rural and coastal communities has been brought into sharp focus again after plans to build a holiday site in the Ogwen Valley were announced. There are proposals to build 40 cabins and glamping pods in the area, but it's seen opposition by some local campaigners who say communities in Eryri or Snowdonia cannot cope with more development. Our reporter Ian Lang looks at the arguments.
It's an industry that brings in billions of pounds in income to Wales, but it's not the money that's making the headlines these days. It's the huge number of visitors that come here to enjoy our country. In Eryri, we've seen the impact that's been having, from car chaos to litter disgrace. It's created national headlines and sparked a sometimes furious debate about what's to be done. It's the sheer beauty of landscapes like this that have made North Wales such a must-go destination for visitors. But what happens when a flow becomes a torrent? It's a question that has been asked, that is being asked. Is there such a thing as over-tourism? It's an often divisive issue, from the sheer number of visitors to second homes and the impact on Welsh-speaking communities. Most recently, it's been focused on plans by a Manchester-based company for a tourist development of cabins and glamping pods just outside the Ogwen Valley near Bangor. Campaigners like Howard Hughes say it's time to call a halt.
There are thousands of holiday lets, second homes, cabins, tents, caravans, all kinds of sites being loaded onto the same areas, and it's too much. They can't take any more. We can't take any more as communities.
It's not a view shared by the CEO of North Wales Tourism, who points out the industry creates 42,000 equivalent full-time jobs and brings in more than £3 billion to the region. Can there be over-tourism or too much tourism?
No, I don't believe we've got over-tourism. I think we've got a problem with under-tourism. When we talk about over-tourism in North Wales, it's about busy periods, especially in the summer months. The areas are very, very busy and overcrowded.
But the search for sustainable solutions is already on, from the Welsh Government to Gwynedd Council and Eryri National Park, all looking at ways for striking the right balance between welcoming tourists and protecting communities and the environment. And on the ground, there's a clear consensus that answers are needed.
I think you do have to be careful when there are huge numbers of tourism, because you have to provide the facilities for them. You have to have car parking, you have to have toilets, you have to have the infrastructure. So I think there's definitely a balance to be had, but tourism, is a key part of our economy. So we don't want to put people off either.
Where you've got an isolated park, for example, that's been ready-made, not encouraging into the local businesses, and just, the roads, the infrastructure, if it's not quite up to that, and you've got people coming in their motorhomes, for example, things happen too fast, it needs management.
Good, it brings, income to local businesses, shops and whatever, but it's the impact, so you see, of people who are going out having picnics, leaving the rubbish on the floor.
So it's a matter of finding solutions that satisfy everyone, and that's not going to be easy. Ian Lang, ITV News in the Ogwen Valley.
An interesting debate. A penalty on the stroke of half-time from striker Kayleigh Green sealed a narrow 1-0 victory for Wales women against Philippines last night. It was the first match for Gemma Granger's side in the Pinatar Cup tournament in Spain. Still to come on the ITV Evening News.
Coming up on the programme, a major escalation in strike action by nurses. For the first time, NHS staff from emergency and intensive care units announced that they will join the walkouts. We will have all the details. Also ahead, the family of Nicola Bulley plead with the public to stop speculating about her private life, urging the focus to return to finding the missing mother of two. How soaring gas and oil prices help the owners of British Gas make a record profit of £3.3 billion. We'll look at calls for the firm to pay more tax. Plus, the haunting new footage of the Titanic wreckage, seen in full for the very first time. Do join me for those stories and more at 6:30.
Work has begun to repair Bodalwyddan's Marble Church after a section of the historic building was damaged in a storm. St Margaret's Church has been a popular landmark in the town for over 150 years. Our reporter Joanne Gallagher went along to see how the work is getting underway.
If you've travelled along the A55, you've definitely seen this magnificent spire, all 202 feet of it, reaching up to the sky. It's St Margaret's in Bodalwyddan, known locally as the Marble Church. Scaffolding's covering up its beauty today after storm damage, costing £100,000.
So beginning of last year, last February, I think it was Storm Arwen, there was a lot of churches damaged, a lot of damage all around, but it loosened some of the finials off the bottom of the church tower. And the work has to be done? The work has to be done, yes. We had to close. Sadly, the roofers went up and said that because the finials might come loose again, and if we get any more strong winds, then we had to close those church doors, sadly. The church remained open, but the church doors had to be closed and the work has to be done.
It took 4 years to build this beautiful pearl of the Vale, but don't worry, the repair work won't take that long.
Hopefully not, no. Don't tempt fate, no. Probably by the spring. It's been, they're nearly finished the scaffolding, so it's just the work then, and then the removal of the scaffolding so it'll be spring.
Has it been an inconvenience having the work carried out?
It has been an inconvenience having those doors closed at the back of church, yeah, because we have a lot of weddings. We managed, and we found different ways of doing it. Obviously, the brides weren't able to come in through the big main doors.
Don't worry if your big day's coming up. Now the scaffolding's in place, the wedding march down the aisle is back on, and this beautiful landmark, standing proud for more than 160 years, will soon be back to its full marble glory, looking over Boddle Withan and the A55. Joanne Gallagher, ITV News.
Amazing pictures. Time for the weather now, and it was a dark and misty start here in Cardiff this morning, but let's find out what's in store for the next few days. Charlie Powell is here with the forecast.
Transport for Wales. Proud sponsors of ITV Cymru Wales Weather.
Hello. Now, the rest of this week will maintain a fairly cloudy theme with a little bit of sunshine. It's quite limited. More likely to see some outbreaks of rain from time to time, some brisk winds, particularly tomorrow. It's just going to stay on the mild side. That's an absolute certainty. We've got a deep area of low pressure working its way across the north of Scotland. It's been named by the Danish Weather Service as Storm Otto. Won't affect us, though. We're going to see some weather systems pushing through, but they're just going to bring kind of weak fronts, some cloudier weather, some brisk winds, yes, but nothing too stormy. As for the rest of tonight, well, it's going to be pretty quiet and non-eventful, I guess you could say. It's pretty dry for most. There's a lot of cloud around, a lot of hill fog as well, and a bit of drizzle across some of the highest peaks, and a breezy old night. So all in all, those ingredients will give us a pretty mild one. Most places staying in double figures, maybe down to 7 or 8 degrees in the countryside. So it's certainly frost-free and certainly a mild start as we wake up on Friday. And for most of us, Friday will be a similar sort of day again. For a lot of us, it will be dry. A lot of us will have some cloud, although it seems that a lot of the low cloud probably just sticking on the sort of southern part of Wales, I think. The rest of the country having a little bit more sunshine, hopefully. The wind helping to break up some of that cloud. And again, it's a mild one. Temperatures between sort of 10 and 13 Celsius. So, yeah, it's a good chunk above where it ought to be, really, for the time of year. As for the weekend, hope something a little bit brighter still. Bit of a change in yesterday's forecast. Now it looks like Saturday might see 1 or 2 more showers creeping in, with Sunday perhaps the more reliably dry and bright day, but either way it should look a little bit more inviting out there. Some slightly cloudier, perhaps return some damp weather into the start of next week, but the temperatures right the way through will stay well above average.
Trafnidiaeth Cymru yn falch I noddi tywyd ITV Cymru Wales.
Our thanks to Charlie. And that was Wales at 6. I'll be back with a late update. That's after the news at 10. Hope you can join me for that. But for now, from all the team across Wales, thanks for watching.
At SCS, you can feel the hug of home for less. You can snuggle up on the Dahlia sofa, now less than half price. Or you can get the Brody for a price you'll love, now only $7.95. And sink your feet into a new carpet with free fitting. Offers end 27th of February. SCS, helping create the home you love.
Saga Holidays. What springs to mind? Experience tells me you probably think we're constantly stopping for tea. It's not entirely unfair. You think we like just pootling along? Hey! You probably think we love regular afternoon lie-downs. Oh, that we're often found in slow-moving groups. You're not wrong. And more than anything, we love to follow someone holding a flag. Yes, a holiday with Saga is everything you probably thought it was. And a little bit more.
Discover tailor-made travel by Saga at All Protected.
We're heading to Cardiff.
It's me, John Bishop.
Me, Ian McKellen, and an amazing cast.
In Mother Goose.
We're having the time of our lives in this comedy show. Come and see us at it. Everyone loves this show, and I love John Bishop.
Coming to the Wales Millennium Centre this March for 1 week only.
Book now at wmc.org.uk.
Still can't believe I'm on stage with Gandalf.
More strikes next month. Now intensive care and emergency nurses say they will join the picket line. NHS England staff say they'll walk out on the 1st of March, but this time for 48 rather than 12 hours. And rail workers too announce further action, disrupting travel for 4 days from mid-March. The unions demand urgent talks with the government.
We can't wait any longer. We can't wait another day. The Prime Minister needs to get round a table. He needs to choose talking and resolving the strike and sorting out the NHS.
Well, the Royal College of Nursing claims the government is refusing to negotiate. The Health Secretary says that's not true, and so the standoff continues, with the public paying the price. Also tonight, after days of swirling rumour, a plea from Nicola Bulley's family: stop the speculation and concentrate on finding the missing mother of two. Centrica under fire. The British Gas parent posts record profits, prompting calls for higher taxes on energy firms. Plus,
this is the world's newest valley.
the day the Earth split open, nature's might made plain after the quake that's laid waste to parts of Syria and Turkey. And a high fashion farewell to Vivienne Westwood. Style icons past and present turn out to remember the godmother of punk.
You can never overdress. So I think, so for me, I dug up my best tartan overcoat that I could in memory.
This is the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale.
Good evening. Nursing unions have tonight ramped up their bitter pay dispute with the government, extending strikes to include those working in emergency and intensive care units. The next walkouts at NHS England are set for the 1st of March, and this time it's going to last 48 hours, not 12 hours like before. And with more staff involved, and indeed for longer, the impact and the disruption are going to be even greater. The Royal College of Nursing says the government is refusing to engage in negotiations. That's echoed by rail unions, which have announced more strike dates tonight. More on that in just a moment. But first, here's Neil Connery on the escalating nurses' dispute.